the Caps fell to the Dallas Stars. This guy spends days and nights with the Washington Capitals, my dream job. He covers the Caps for WashingtonCaps.com. He is Vogue's Caps. We welcome on for the first time, if not ever in a long time, Mike Vogel joins us live via satellite and about to pack the bags and go on the road here with the Caps. Not the best look on Monday Night Vogues, but I would think that the hardest part's staying motivated at this point, right?
Yeah, it wasn't, for whatever reason, over the last couple of decades, the Dallas Stars have had the Caps number. It's been more than a decade since Washington defeated Dallas in D.C., and when they defeated the Stars down in Big D about 6 weeks ago, it marked the first time in 10 years that they'd won in that building. So for whatever reason, these guys, it doesn't matter which team's up or down in the standings, doesn't matter who's on the rosters or whatever. This thing goes back to about 1993 when the Stars moved south, ended life as the Minnesota North Stars and moved to Dallas. I think the Caps have won, I want to say, 5 out of about 25, 26 games played between the two teams since then. So there's no rhyme or reason to it. It just is. And, you know, their 15-game home winning streak, which was a real impressive run, came to a halt on Monday when they lost that game to the Stars, and I think it was just a matter of digging too big of a hole there early in the game. They were down 3-0, 26 minutes in, and Braden Holtby winds up getting pulled through really no fault of his own. First goal was sort of a bit of a disaster as far as a defenseman checking a Stars player into the crease,
and an early disaster as well. Yeah.
No, second minute of the game, and you know, so they were definitely on their heels a little bit, and then they managed to get through the first just down the one goal, and you're thinking, okay, well, you know, Dallas, worst PK in the league, and they bleed goals against a little bit. You got a chance here, but they were never able to get right. A couple of really egregious turnovers there in their own end, and they both wind up behind Holtby, and you know, he's sitting on the bench, sort of ruining what went on there for the rest of the night. And you know, the Caps, to their credit, they pulled their boots on and got to work after that, but it was a little too late, and you know, too many scoring chances that didn't get finished, and a lot of rebounds that were left laying around in front of the net that Dallas got to before they did. And so they go out west now, and you see it back up, and you got 3 games in 4 nights against 3 pretty good hockey teams in California. So it won't be an easy task, but I think that's actually a good thing for this team, and I think it's a good thing for them to be playing less familiar opponents. I think it'll help them keep focused and keep their edge a little bit more.
Yeah, it's definitely this is the toughest thing they're going to do, and especially where the focus is President's Trophy. What do we care? 1 seed, 2 seed. You want to be the 1 seed, whatever. You know, the lead's pretty big. I don't like the way Ovechkin. There's a lot of things. There's a lot of meat on the bone here. First off, there's a lot of things to say right now. Well, you don't have to like it right now. You want to like it 6 weeks from now. And look, man, you and I have been at this for a long, long time. You know, I go back to 87 in the triple overtime. I mean, I actually go back to, you know, probably 81 or 82, quite frankly, with watching them and rooting for them every night. And we all know they're the Cubs, they're the Red Sox, they're the team that hasn't been there. And we're about to enter that season, right? That's where the conversation's going to be. You know, for me, it's all about health, and it's all about them playing together and playing well. If guys are down, if they're struggling, get them out of the lineup. Let's get some other seasoning. Let's mix some lines up. Let's look at some possibilities for what's going to happen, because you're not going to stay healthy in April and May, even if you do survive and the beards get long and gray.
Yeah, I think you know, one of the things that's sort of fueled the run they've been on, because the half season run here, where I think they've lost maybe 5 or 6 regulation games in their last 40 or 41. Part of that has been the continuity and the consistency of the forward lines, and you know what, they were also due a little bit of a market correction, I think. You know, when you look at some of the games they were winning in January and February, you know, winning 5-0 games against really good hockey teams, putting I think it was a 6-0 spanking on the Chicago Blackhawks, 5-0 over Columbus, 5-2 over Pittsburgh. They were dominating teams, but they were getting pretty much every bounce. They were, as I think it was TJ Oshie put it to me, pucks were sort of falling into the net. And now, when
They
that
were making
happens,
it look very easy. They really were.
yeah, exactly. Nobody can sustain a 20% shooting percentage for very long, because that means the opposition goaltenders are around 80%. That's just not going to happen. So the market correction was due, and it looks like it's here, because I think these last the 9 games since they came back from the break, although they've been a respectable 5-3-1, they've had to really grind out some of these games. There's been a couple 2-1 wins. There's been a 1-0 win. These games haven't come nearly as easy as some of the ones earlier in the season. They've had to rely on their bedrock, which has been their defense, to get points and get wins here since the end of the bye week. So I have no doubt. There's enough offensive talent on this team, and it goes deep. You've got, I think, 10 forwards that have double-digit goal totals, and you get a couple other guys that are sort of knocking at the door there. So that's the one thing that they hope that they've improved this year, is their secondary and tertiary scoring, because that's ultimately what undid them in the second round of the playoffs last year against Pittsburgh. Pittsburgh's scoring went 3 lines deep, and the first 2 lines sort of neutralized each other, but the Penguins' third line had their way with Washington. So the Caps' third line much improved this season. Caps' fourth line much improved this season, to the point where, with 17 games remaining now, the bottom 6 has already scored more goals for Washington this season than it did all of last season. So anything they get here over these last 17 games in that regard is really gravy.
Well,
and you just hope it keeps going in the playoffs.
Yeah, it's a little demoralizing to lose to a quote-unquote bad team, but to your point, they're not going to see familiar faces here. I mean, you can only get shoved around by the Penguins and the Flyers and the Rangers and get up for those games, knowing that they're going to be there in April. And I'll say this, the way they played in January, the way they played at home, you at least know where that ceiling is for this team. And the ceiling is they could, should, might, can win the Stanley Cup. There are a lot of teams in the league that don't believe they can win the Stanley Cup, so that's a blessing and it's a curse on a chilly Monday night in March where you're really not playing for a lot. And every time you see these bubble teams between, let's say, 6-11, 6-12, and they're going to see some of those type of teams here coming up, teams that really are fighting for home ice advantage to get in, to guarantee themselves in, they're going to get a catfight every night because they're widely perceived as the best team in the National Hockey League, and they've earned that designation by kicking teams' asses for the last 3 months.
Yeah, they definitely get the best of everyone. And what I mean by that is, you get New Jersey in here last Thursday, first night of a 3-game homestand, and the day after the trade deadline, and New Jersey moved out 3 veteran, impending unrestricted free agents are clearly giving up the ghost and playing for next year. They got like 6 forwards in the lineup with fewer than 100 games in the league. But it wasn't an easy night. The Caps needed a power play goal in the third period. It turned out to be the only goal of the game. Shots were tough to come by. It might have been the worst hockey game that most of us had seen in a couple of years.
And by the way, when the Caps are playing in late May and those kids are in their 5th week of golf and they look back, they'll say, we held those guys scoreless for 2 weeks. We played with them a little bit. In the same way we're seeing the Wizards now play with the Cavaliers and the Warriors to just let you believe they can play with them,
Exactly. And, this is, like you said, we see what the ceiling is, and what they've done with, I think, 6 regulation losses in about 32, 33 home games this year. They've made Verizon Center a tough place to come in and play and to get 2 points or even 1 point this season. So that's what you want to do going into the playoffs, especially if you're going to be that team that finishes up top and guarantees itself, home ice advantage through the first 3 rounds while you're on your side of the table, so to speak, before you get out west for the final if you manage to get that far. So I think they put themselves in that position. They've made Verizon Center a tough place to play. That building's rocking pretty hard, particularly in the playoffs. So I think that they're exactly where they want to be there. Now it's a matter of maintaining the they've got a fairly comfortable lead going into the Monday game. They were the team with the biggest lead of any of the 4 division leaders. So it's not like they're getting pressured from behind. They don't have games left with Pittsburgh. They've got 1 left with the Rangers. They've got 2 left with Columbus. I'm not sure that's going to be enough for any of those teams to make up the ground that's there. So the Caps are, firmly in control of their own destiny here, with about a month left in the season, a little bit more than a month, and they've got a couple tough road trips. So 3 games and 4 nights in California is not easy. They've got a long, multiple country, 5-game road trip that's about 10 days in length, that bridges the end of March and the beginning of April. That one will be rugged. But other than that, they have a lot of those stretches where they play every other day, and that's their wheelhouse because until they lost that game to Dallas on Monday, they were 32-2, playing on exactly 1 day's rest. So that leaves them at 33-2, obviously. And they've still got nine of their remaining 17 games come in that situation. And hey, when we get to the playoffs, that's pretty much what you're looking at.
Well, what's crazy is you can break any split down you want, Vogues, right? I mean, literally, for this team. Home, road, day, night, artificial ice, real ice, east, west. I mean, it's kind of like breaking down the Golden State Warriors. They've kind of beaten everybody most of the time. I mean, it's been that good, especially if you take out the first 10, 12 games of the year where they were kind of so-so, quite frankly, right?
Yeah, they even, like you said, they were so-so, but they had an 8-2-1 record after 11 games. They were kind of getting by on defense and the odd timely goal early in this season. They've beaten every team in the East. Every team in the East they have beaten. The only teams in the West that they've played and have yet to beat are San Jose, and they'll get a chance on Thursday night.
And that's always a hellhole out there for them. I mean, they never show up historically in San Jose.
Yeah,
right?
That's been a tough one. They managed to get, they had gone like 21 years without winning in that building before they won. I think it was 2014. They finally got that monkey off their back, and they've won one since then. So they won, I think, 2 of their last 3 visits to the Shark Tank there. But they haven't won in Los Angeles since 2005, so that's not an easy building for them either. They have had some good success against the Ducks, but that's not going to be an easy game because it's going to come 22 hours after the game in Los Angeles, and those are a couple of the biggest, heaviest teams out west. So facing Los Angeles and Anaheim back-to-back nights, 22 hours apart, that's not a 4-point recipe right there for anybody, even the Capitals, who have the league's best record. So, the other team that they've played and haven't beaten is Nashville. They went into Nashville again, 22 hours after a game the night before, and weren't able to overcome the Preds. The Preds will be here on the 16th of this month, so that'll be their chance to take them down. But to go into the playoffs, and at least you only play those teams out west twice each. So to go into the playoffs and to know that you can and have beaten every one of the 15 other teams in your conference, and know that you can and have beaten all those teams that you could run into the playoffs has got to be good for their confidence.
Well, I think they're going to see the Maple Leafs, folks. If I'm drawing straws right now, at some point I think they're going to wind up seeing, any amalgamation of those bottom teams, Boston, the Rangers, the Islanders, and I think, I want to go up and see a playoff game in Toronto. I'm just jonesing for that. So whether it's 1-2, wherever it is, I want to see what it looks like up there to see these young guys flying around. But April should scare everyone, right? It always does.
Yeah.
And where they are. The one thing I want to say to you is, how long have you been on the beat now?
I've been covering this team since 1995.
95. So 6 coaches, 7 coaches. How many has it been?
Yeah,
coming in Schoenfeld? Where'd you come in?
Let's see. Schoenfeld, Wilson, Hamlin, Boudreau,
Cassidy
Hunter, in there? Oates, and then now Trotz.
So if I'm just, in a bar with you and say, so tell me what makes Trotz special. Tell me why this team's special. What would you say to someone?
Why this team's special? There's no bad guys in the room. They all get along pretty well together. I think Barry, one of the things that makes Barry special is he's got maybe the best coaching staff, certainly the best coaching staff this team has had in its history. And, all of these guys have a great, rich history. There's almost 90 years worth of coaching experience between everybody that's on this staff. And a lot of guys don't have the sack to hire coaches with that much experience, and especially where you got guys like Todd Reardon and Lane Lambert, both of whom have been head coaches at the AHL level and have been assistants for years at the NHL level, and both of whom have made no bones about the fact that they want to be head coaches in the NHL. A lot of guys don't have the ego or the strength, the support system within themselves to allow someone, even one guy on the staff like that, let alone two. But, Barry, he's made no bones about it. He says, look, we want to win here. We want to develop players here, but we also want to develop coaches. So I think for Barry, and he's even said, hey, if one of these guys someday replaces me, that's a good thing. That's what we want. So he's just really selfless. I think, he's all about the organization and making the organization better. He's just one of the best human beings that you'll ever run across.
I collected him in 1987, and I've known him since, right? So, I mean, he stayed in my life that long. Hell, I got half a closet of Nashville Predators jerseys here, folks. I mean, so for Trotz to come in, it's one thing for me to lavish praise upon Barry. And by the way, he's coming up to Baltimore on the 20th. We're going to do a swabbing for the bone marrow registry. And my friendship with him, it's almost like sort of blindness, There are people that were friends with Donald Trump before he became president, too, and say whatever they say about him. But, in the case of Barry Trotz, he's collected so many people through this sport, and to see him get the 700 wins and not have a cup and really never come close to having a cup and to have this kind of talent, and the thing feels made for him, right? Like, he didn't want to be anywhere else. I mean, I know him well enough to know that. They didn't really want anyone else. I remember sending a text to Ted Leonsis from my wife's hospital bed because my wife was ill the first time Barry got the job. My son had texted me because I was out of the loop, and he said, my son said, Barry's going to get the Caps job. I'm like, what? And I text Ted Leonsis, and I said, you'll never regret that. You'll never regret hiring Barry Trotz. It might not work out. It might not be a cup. A lot of things got to go right, even when you're the best team, as they found out last year. Now they're going to have that around their neck again, and I think there's something about this that Trotz is going to navigate this to the finish line. I really believe this team's going to win a cup. Now, I don't know whether it's going to happen in, 10 weeks, 12 weeks, whatever's time, but I believe they're going to win a cup with Barry Trotz here because I think it's sort of meant to be here at some point.
Yeah, I mean, I agree with you. I think it was a perfect match for Barry to come here, and it was a perfect match at the time for the Caps to hire him. And the combination of him and Brian McClellan has been a real boon to this team and this organization. I mean, the couple of years that Adam Oates was here, there was a little bit of damage done to the fabric of the organization, and they missed the playoffs here in 13-14. It's the only season they've missed the playoffs here in the last, I think, 11 years now. There was a little bit of darkness there, and it wasn't a foregone conclusion by any means that they would be able to get back to the elite of the league. It's one of those things. Do we rebuild? Do we retool? What do we do here? And, Brian, I think that you can't give enough credit to certainly Barry, but also Brian McClellan, because it was not an easy hire to give Brian that job. You had all these guys out there that you could have gone outside the organization. George McPhee had been here for 17 years, and Brian McClellan had worked for him for 10 of those 17 years. So, you could say, hey, we got to make a clean break. We got to go outside like they did for Barry, but I actually think that the smart thing was staying within the organization for the GM, because he was a guy who knew exactly, what was going on here, what had gone on here, who was worth hanging on to, where the holes were, what needed to be addressed, and in what order, and all that kind of stuff. And he's been really methodical about it. He added Niskanen and Orpik the first summer. He added Oshie and Williams the second summer. He added Connolly and Eller the third summer, and then he picks up Kevin Shattenkirk here last week. So he's put these two guys have put this team in the best possible position it can be in going forward here as far as trying to win this thing in 2017. And now the rest really is up to the guys on the ice.
Yeah, I had a friend of mine last year. We were sitting in a bar in Colorado. waiting for a Springsteen show, and the Flyers were playing the Caps, and it was late in the year last year, that game, and he said to me, "What has made the Caps so good? Like, how did this happen? I mean, I know Ovechkin, I know Backstrom, but what about the rest of it?" And I said, this is an incredible case, and this is how you win the President's Trophy. And the NFL's, and folks, I know you follow that as well. This week, the free agency period, we're up here talking about Ozzie Newsome. The Redskins are trying to figure out what the hell's going on with McLuhan down there and Allen and all that stuff. And it's like sort of like what the Cowboys did last year, which is everything went right. They wind up at a fourth-round quarterback. They wind up with a running back that can play. They got every decision they made sort of kind of netted and worked out. That's the story of the 2001 Ravens. That's kind of the story of the 2013 Ravens. When you win championships, every decision, every free agent gets on the field. They play well because you're paying them a ton of money. They have to. Your rookies pan out. Your mid-range guys that are playing for contracts, go out there and earn their money. Your kicker kicks. Your goalie goaltends. Your scorers score. Your defenders defend. But more than that, you probably stay healthy as well. And in the case of McClellan, when you start talking about Niskanen and Orpik, and, it's sort of an agonizing decision to let Mike Green get out. And, decisions about guys like Brooks Like and, Joel Ward, guys that were good guys that they liked having around. For every Zach Sanford that's sacrificed in this thing, every decision, every trade, other than the Forsberg thing, right? Because we'll always hear that anytime the Predators are around. Every other decision has been the antithesis of a Jake Arrieta release.
Yeah, and the Forsberg trade was obviously still under the McPhee regime as well. And you know what? There's a lot more. There's some layering to that too. I've always made the case that if you did have Forsberg, you wouldn't have a lot of the guys who are on this team because Philip Forsberg eats up about $6 million worth of salary. So if he was still here, you can subtract a few of the guys that are on this team right now. So no guarantee that it would have played out the way that it did.
Yeah, there'd be no T.J. Oshie, right? I mean, and one
right.
of the defensemen would be.
You may not have needed T.J. Oshie, so there's that point too. But the other thing is, Nestor, you go back to the reason that they needed to make that trade in the first place was because Brooks Like was hurt. Well, how did Brooks Like get hurt? He got hurt during the lockout. So, I mean, if the owners don't lock out the players and you don't miss the whole first half of the 12-13 season and Brooks Like doesn't tear his groin up playing in Switzerland, maybe none of that ever happens. Maybe there's already a cup here by now. I mean, who knows? You can go back to the whole butterfly effect thing. Everything that happens changes everything that happens after that. So the Caps, to me, are at least partially responsible. They're all the owners were in lockstep on deciding to lock out the players, and who knows? I mean,
well, you know what? Here's what, dude. When they win the cup, and Trotz has a bottle of Tom Ebright's champagne from 1992, I believe, Calder Cup. And Tom has since left us. He was the owner of the Portland Pirates and my friend. He married a Dundalk, my Dundalk compatriot, Joyce Ebright as well. And he's got that champagne. And he keeps telling me, when the Caps win the cup, he's bringing the cup to Baltimore, and we're going to drink Tom Ebright champagne out of the chalice in Baltimore. So that I got skin in the game here, Vogues. You know what I mean? So I'm vested. But when this thing happens, and I want you to write Red Rain. I wrote Purple Rain too, and the whole premise of my book is all of the things that had to happen to piece this thing together. How Ovechkin happened for them, how Holtby happened for them. Who is Mitch Korn, who's one of the most interesting cats ever. Justin Williams and his incredible journey to this spot. There are stories along every one of these, everywhere that cup would go, and it does every year, that tie this whole thing together. And the angst of Ted Leonsis and, having to fire all of these coaches. I mean, because I don't think they ever really wanted to get rid of Boudreau. I think they still would look back if they didn't have Barry Trotz and say, maybe we should have found a way to make that work, in my opinion.
Yeah, I mean, that's a great point, too, because, even Bruce was fired right after Thanksgiving in 2011, and the team got off to a 7-0 start that year. And it's just, we still talk about it. You're sitting there on November 1st with, I think, like an 82 record, and by the end of the month, the guy's gone. It just, it just spiraled out of control so quickly. But we all knew that it was coming too at that point, and it was just one of those things.
Hey, man, you know how my book begins, my Ravens second book? I would tell Billick, this who's my business partner, I say in the beginning, you get shot in the head. That's how the book starts. And, so for, Billick had gone 13-3, right? I mean, the year before, and had a bye, and had 5 years left on his deal and got fired. So, these things that happen begat everything. And obviously, Barry Trotz could still be in Nashville right now with Poyle, and if they won a couple of playoff series, he wouldn't be here. So, all of that pieces together, but this is two President's Trophies, we think, in a row, and there's going to be a lot of pressure, and I can't wait to talk to you about it next month when this thing gets going. Hey, enjoy the West Coast trip, dude. I think we could sit here all day. If beer were involved, we'd be here all night, I think, talking about this, because I love the Caps, and I know you love covering the Caps, and we appreciate the work, and we're following along on Twitter and at WashingtonCaps.com. So I'll take a time out, and it'll be continued in a couple of weeks. How about that?
All right. Yeah, sounds good, Nestor. Thanks for having me.
Always a pleasure. Mike Vogel, Vogue's Caps is the way to find him out on Twitter. At some point, I just got to break it because I got to go talk football. I got to go talk Terps. I got Big Ten. I got Wizards. But I can do a deep dig around here. Don't you think I can't? Nasty at WNST.net finds me, and I will be up late with the Caps and the Wizards into the weekend, as well as at the Big Ten tournament with the Terps on Friday night. Spring training. We got NFL Combine and free agency. It's going to be nutty around here on the WNST Tech Service. If there's ever a time to join the Tech Service, if you're not on it, give it the trial, 10-day, free of charge, your money back guaranteed. Just go to WNST.net and sign up. It's all brought to you by Coons Ford of Security Boulevard. Dennis Kolatzis will be here every Thursday from 3 until 5. It is the SSV on WNST. He'll drive you home as well. Buy a Toyota Audio Vaults there. If you miss anything this week, we had a lot of great stuff on the program this week. You can also catch it on the radio live. Just download the TuneIn Radio app. You can listen from anywhere, anytime. Our morning newspaper wraps it all up, including Ed Frankovic's blogs on the Caps. And that is all brought to you by Planet Fitness and PlanetFitness.com. Last but never least, Nasty at WNST.net for all praise. I don't really want any criticism. Do that to me out on Twitter or your Facebook page. I'd appreciate that. We're on Facebook Live, as well as our YouTube WNSTV channel. And what else? Instagram, Snapchat, LinkedIn. I'm all over the place. We are WNST.net, AM 1570, and WNST Towson, Baltimore, and we never stop talking Baltimore sports.